It began as just another chilly Monday morning at the Green Hollow Sanitation Depot in rural Michigan. The kind of place where most people barely notice the men and women who keep the streets clean. But that morning, something strange flickered across the black and white CCTV screen mounted in the break room. "Hey, is that a dog?" Marvin, the senior waste collector, asked, leaning in closer to the fuzzy footage. Sure enough, a German shepherd sat rigidly still beside a battered metal trash can outside the depot's south fence. It wasn't sniffing or digging, just sitting. Hours passed, rain trickled, garbage trucks came and went. But the dog didn't move. By 4:30 p.m., the same dog was still there, motionless, watching. At first, the crew thought maybe it was a stray guarding scraps. But then it returned the next day, and the next, always sitting by the same dented trash can. Never barking, never approaching the workers. By Thursday, curiosity had turned into concern. The depot's manager, Rhonda Clark, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s with a soft spot for animals, decided to review the security footage from earlier in the week. What she saw chilled her. The dog hadn't just wandered there. It had followed a garbage truck into the yard Monday morning. But instead of chasing it playfully, it had rushed straight to that specific trash can and sat. Rhonda leaned back in her chair, eyes wide. "It's not guarding garbage," she murmured. "It's waiting. Waiting. For what?" She made a call. "Animal control won't come unless it's aggressive," she told the crew. "But I say, well, we check the can right now." They walked outside, 4 workers surrounding the silent shepherd, who simply looked up and wagged its tail once. Then Marvin lifted the lid of the rusted bin, and everyone froze. Inside the trash can was no ordinary refuse. Beneath a layer of fast food wrappers and a broken umbrella, something pale and soft caught Marvin's eye. He reached in gently and gasped. A baby blanket, faded pink, carefully folded. "Wait," Rhonda whispered, pushing Marvin aside. She leaned in deeper, her breath caught in her throat. A tiny arm. The scream that left her lips brought the others running. One of the younger workers, Dave, pulled the blanket out completely, and there, wrapped inside like a fragile secret, was a baby, barely breathing, pale, eyes closed. No more than a few days old. "My God," Rhonda whispered, trembling. "She's alive." The dog let out a soft whimper and gently nudged Rhonda's leg with its nose. "Get 911 on the line," someone shouted. "Now!" As the paramedics arrived minutes later, the baby was whisked away in a thermal blanket. One EMT shook his head in disbelief. Another hour, and she might not have made it. Hypothermia would have set in. The German shepherd watched the entire scene unfold, tail wagging low, eyes never leaving the trash can. When the ambulance pulled away, the dog sat back down in its original spot, almost as if its mission wasn't over yet. The baby girl, nicknamed Hope by hospital staff, was admitted to County General's NICU. Doctors confirmed she'd been abandoned less than 12 hours after birth, malnourished, dehydrated, but still clinging to life. Back at the sanitation depot, the German shepherd remained. "He's not a stray," Rhonda said, observing the dog the next morning. "He's got a collar, no tags though." When animal control finally arrived, the shepherd refused to move. Not with treats, not with coaxing, not even with firm commands. But when Rhonda stepped forward and whispered, "It's okay now," the dog finally stood and gently pressed his forehead to her knee. They took him to the local shelter. Staff named him Shadow. Rhonda visited him daily while the story hit the local news. Soon, TV vans and reporters swarmed the depot. A baby left in the trash, a dog refusing to leave her side. People were calling Shadow a hero, but Rhonda had a gut feeling it wasn't that simple. This dog wasn't just in the right place at the right time, she told a local journalist. He knew. 2 days later, her instincts were proven right. A woman named Clara Monroe walked into the police station in a panic. Mid-20s, tear-streaked face, hands trembling. She claimed her sister Angie had given birth in secret and disappeared days ago. She said she had to do something unforgivable, Clara sobbed. I didn't understand. She left a note, but I didn't think she'd actually do it. Detectives connected the dots quickly. The note was vague, mentioning only that Angie couldn't raise a baby and someone good would find her. Clara confirmed they owned a German shepherd named Shadow, who had been missing since Sunday night. When shown a photo of the dog from the news, Clara collapsed in tears. "That's him," she whispered. "That's Shadow. Angie raised him from a pup." Police issued an alert for the mother, Angie Monroe, who had vanished into the city's outskirts. Authorities believed she had placed her newborn in the trash can near the depot sometime in the early morning. And Shadow had followed the scent, refusing to leave her behind. A dog's loyalty had saved a life. But the story wasn't over yet, because when Angie was finally found 3 days later, what she revealed stunned everyone. Police located Angie Monroe in a rundown motel just outside of town. Dehydrated, emotionally unstable, she didn't resist arrest. She just kept asking, "Is she alive? Did Shadow find her?" At the station, detectives sat her down gently. A social worker stayed close as they asked the hard questions. Angie confessed without hesitation. "I panicked," she whispered. "Clara didn't know I was pregnant. No one did. The baby's father left me before I could even tell him. I thought I could do it alone, but when she came, I wasn't ready." Her eyes welled up. "I didn't want to kill her, I swear. I thought if I left her somewhere, someone kind might find her. Someone better than me." She explained that Shadow had sensed everything. The contractions, the crying, the fear. "He followed me when I took her. I didn't mean for him to come. But when I ran away, he stayed behind. I guess he wouldn't leave her." She sobbed into her hands. "He always protected me, but this time he protected her." Officers didn't see a monster in Angie. They saw a young woman, broken by fear and isolation. She was charged with child endangerment, but granted psychiatric evaluation instead of jail. Thanks in part to Clara, who begged the judge for compassion. And as for the baby, Hope, she was already turning heads across the state. News of Hope and her hero dog made it to national networks. Elderly couples from Florida to Maine sent blankets. A retired vet in Alberta offered to adopt the dog. Letters poured into the hospital, some addressed just to the baby in the trash can. But Rhonda, the sanitation depot manager, had other ideas. She came into this world next to a trash can, but she was never garbage, she told a reporter from the Detroit Free Press. "That dog knew better than all of us. He saw something worth guarding." Rhonda started a petition, signed by nearly 100,000 people, to keep Shadow and Hope together. The hospital staff, deeply moved, supported the idea. Even Child Protective Services agreed. It would be best if the two weren't separated during the baby's recovery. So Rhonda filed to become Hope's emergency guardian. "I'm 62, she told the judge. "I run a sanitation depot, not a nursery. But if I can give her love and safety and keep that dog by her side, I'll do it without blinking." The judge, a grandfather himself, signed off. Shadow would go home with them both. Hope's recovery was slow but steady. Shadow never left her crib. He'd rest his chin on the edge, staring at her for hours, his ears twitching at every tiny sound. Rhonda turned her guest room into a nursery, complete with soft lights and hand-sewn curtains. Local businesses donated formula and diapers. A carpenter from town built a custom dog bed right beside Hope's crib. Doctors confirmed Hope was strong, no lasting damage. Her tiny hands would grip Rhonda's finger, and even at just 2 weeks old, she'd turn her head toward Shadow's warm, watchful presence. "You saved her life, buddy," Rhonda would whisper at night, scratching behind his ears. "You knew what mattered. You stayed." One evening, after feeding Hope, Rhonda sat down with a scrapbook she'd started. The front page had a headline clipped from the paper: "Dog's Devotion Rescues Abandoned Baby." The second page, a picture of Shadow sitting loyally beside that dented trash can. "From trash to treasure," Rhonda smiled. "That's what you made her." 3 months later, Rhonda received a letter. It was from Angie. It wasn't a plea or an apology. It was a thank you. "I know I don't deserve to ask for anything," she wrote. "But if one day Hope asks about me, please tell her the truth, that I loved her, even when I was too scared to raise her, and that Shadow was the best part of me." She enclosed a photo of herself holding Shadow as a puppy. In the background, a younger Clara laughed in a summer garden. Rhonda folded the letter quietly and tucked it into the scrapbook. Later that night, she looked out the window to see Shadow lying under the moonlight beside Hope's crib again, just like he had by that trash can. Not once had he left her side. And Rhonda knew, deep in her bones, that as long as Shadow breathed, Hope would never be alone. Hope grew quickly, her cheeks round and rosy, her laugh like bells. At 6 months, she began reaching for Shadow before anyone else. Her tiny fingers would clutch his fur, and he'd lie perfectly still, tail wagging, as if knowing this was his most sacred duty. Rhonda often caught herself just watching them. A retired sanitation worker watching over a discarded child, and a dog whose loyalty rewrote fate. It was a picture that made even the most hardened men in town soften. The local paper ran a follow-up. From abandoned to adored, baby Hope now thriving with her hero dog. Donations began again. One package arrived with a small locket, engraved with the words, "Found by Love." On Hope's first birthday, the whole town gathered at the depot. They didn't call it a birthday party. They called it a celebration of life and loyalty. A large banner read, "Thank you, Shadow." Rhonda carried Hope onto a small stage, with Shadow at her heels. The crowd went silent as she stepped to the mic. "I've worked 41 years in waste," she said, voice strong. "I've thrown out broken radios, torn clothes, even jewelry. But never, not once, did I find anything more valuable in a trash can than that little girl right there. And the only reason she's here is because a dog stayed when no one else did." The applause was thunderous. As Hope started walking, Shadow changed. He wasn't just a guard dog anymore. He became her shadow in every sense. If Hope stumbled, Shadow braced her with his body. If she cried, he nuzzled her. And at night, when bad dreams stirred, he was there before Rhonda could even get to the crib. Doctors noted Hope's emotional development was unusually strong. "She trusts easily," her pediatrician said. "Children with trauma often struggle with that. But Hope, she trusts because something or someone was always there." Shadow became a fixture at local schools and hospitals, often brought in as a therapy dog. But he only ever relaxed fully at home when Hope was in sight. And as years passed, Rhonda aged. Her knees grew stiffer, her hands slower, but her heart stayed full. One evening, as she rocked a sleepy Hope by the fire, she looked down at Shadow, now graying, eyes a little cloudy, and whispered, "I don't know how many years you've got left, old boy, but I promise you, you've given us more than most humans ever could." Shadow lifted his head just enough and placed a paw on her foot. He understood. Hope was 5 when Shadow collapsed for the first time. It was a quiet morning, and Rhonda had just finished pouring cereal. Hope was playing with her blocks when Shadow let out a low, strange whimper and crumpled beside the fireplace. Rhonda rushed to him, heart thudding. His breathing was shallow, eyes distant. The vet confirmed it, congestive heart failure. Likely from age, stress, or both. "He's lived longer than most shepherds already," the vet said gently. "And it's clear he's been living for something." Rhonda wiped away a tear. He's been living for her. They brought Shadow home with medications and a soft bed. But he no longer chased balls or followed Rhonda from room to room. Still, whenever Hope came near, he perked up. He licked her hand, wagged his tail. The night before he passed, Rhonda found Hope asleep on the floor, curled beside Shadow, her hand on his paw. He was breathing slow, steady. At dawn, he was gone. No whimper, no cry, just peace. Rhonda buried him in the backyard, beneath a cherry tree. Hope didn't speak that day, but she placed her favorite doll, Shadow's unofficial puppy, beside the grave, and then whispered, "Good boy." Years passed, but Shadow's story never faded. Hope grew into a bright, compassionate young woman. She kept his collar beside her bed and his photo on her desk. She'd often say, "I was saved by fur, not fate." At 17, she won a state essay contest with a piece titled "What the Trash Can Taught Me." In it, she wrote, "The world throws away what it doesn't understand, but sometimes something discarded becomes someone's treasure. I was left with the garbage, but a dog saw value in me when no one else did. He waited, he watched, he saved. His name was Shadow, and because he stayed, I lived." She was offered scholarships. She chose to study veterinary medicine. And at her graduation ceremony, an empty chair was reserved in the front row. On it sat a faded pink blanket and a small silver tag engraved with a single word: Shadow. Because legends don't always bark loudly. Sometimes they sit quietly by a trash can and wait until the world is ready to see the treasure they've been guarding all along.